This episode of Why We Bleep is sponsored by Signal Sounds. We all need things from time to time. A friendly hand, the smile from a stranger, 8 channels of free-running LFOs in Eurorack. Yes, friends, we all need things from time to time. So for all your thingies, consider Signal Sounds. They have beautiful and strange modules from fellow Scots, Instro, who are releasing the almost unpronounceable Luba and Abba, which are granular and tape-based processing modules for Eurorack, and are amazing! Amazing! Joined by my friend DivKid's more pronounceable Oct, which offers 8 free-running LFOs in an insanely tiny space of 4 HP. The easiest thing in the world. You turn the rate dial and stuff goes wub. They also have a ton of completely impenetrable video synthesis modules from LZX, and also a module which in Jason's eyes is one of the best analog drum voices in the world, and one of the silliest module names, the Quanalog Boo Boo. So for all your thingies, pick up your internet telephone and contact signalsounds.com. That website is signalsounds.com. Why We Bleep is also sponsored by Obsidian Sound. Let us face it. There's never been more electronic music in the world, which is a joy, but that makes it all the harder for an artist's work to stand out. A properly mastered album or single can truly help your music be a better version of itself. Obsidian Sound, run by musician and mastering engineer Nathan Moody, does just that. Nathan has mastered hundreds of ambient, experimental and electronic releases that are consistently featured in best of end of year lists. Nathan provides that critical, objective ear and final polish, so your music more clearly expresses itself and has a bigger impact on the listener. Visit obsidiansound.net, and if you mention the Why We Bleep podcast, you get 10% off your first mastering project with Nathan. Visit obsidiansound.net. Why? Hi mate, welcome back. Yes, another episode. This time speaking to Mr. Adrian Utley of the band Portishead. Yes, this is one that has been oft requested and I'm very happy to say is here. Adrian makes music, and that is a very important point, and it's the thing I want to think about the most today. I've been obsessing about a series of videos and interviews with Squarepusher recently, because of course it is in the year of our Lord 2020. We are living in the future. We have all of this technology at our fingertips, an incredible array of things that we can explore and new equipment. We have NAMM just around the corner where we're going to find out about even more new equipment, new things. Squarepusher. Now, that is a person that is always worth thinking about. Obviously, he's got an album out soon, but I particularly obsess over Squarepusher because he's so incredibly transparent about the way that he makes music, and yet his music is unfathomably complex and opaque. And I mean, it's very accessible, don't get me wrong, I suppose. I mean opaque in the sense that it's so well constructed. It's frightening music as an electronic musician because you listen to it and you go, okay, yeah, right, I see what you were going for there, but I have absolutely no idea how you possibly constructed it. I just could not sit down and do that. And yet Mr. Jenkinson is so incredibly transparent about the way in which he does it, which is Squarepusher in 2020 makes music the same way that he made it in 1997. So if you listen to the Big Loader EP, which I highly recommend you do, I think that's probably one of my favourite things that he's ever done, which has, Come On My Selector on it and various other classics. That was made on an Akai S950 sampler and a Boss DR660 drum machine as the sequencer. He had a reel-to-reel and an SH-101 and a 303 and some records and a bass guitar. And that's basically it. All he's doing when he makes this music is he is sequencing samples on a sampler that he has recorded in bit by bit. And when I say sequencing, I mean sequencing on a thing that is not really ever designed to be a master sequencer. It was a drum machine, but the DR660 was actually partly designed by Roger Lynn, so that might have something to do with this, and is capable of really complex programming if you get into it, and Tom clearly did. And I love, there's an interview where he said, yeah, I was just like I was in a shop and the guy showed it to me. He was like, check this out. And it was just doing like rock drums or whatever. And I thought, I could probably get something out of that. And he just bought it. And then he went on to make all this music with it. And the bottom line here is that Tom still fundamentally works in the same way. The only difference is that, from what I can infer from interviews, he uses Reactor as a sampler. So he must have his own custom Reactor kind of sample instrument that he's put together that responds to MIDI control messages in the way that he wants. And he just uses a Yamaha QY700, which is a sort of old, like 90s grand sequencer that Yamaha made. And he uses that. And so he's using, and obviously the Eventides. If you've read interviews with him, he's well into the Eventide Orville. Not that he endorses Eventide. He's very quick to point that out. He's just like, but clearly that does work for him. The Orville lets you design your own algorithms and put together blocks and sort of build your own effects. And so he's using Reactor and Orville to do that. And then baking in samples that just have all of this complexity and sound to them and orchestrating them. And that's a very long-winded way of saying, I'm really impressed that he has, bits of kit have come and gone and he's integrated them and sampled them. But on the whole, he's stuck to his guns. He's like, I'm not going to switch DAWs. I'm not going to, I'm not going to think, if I get this one little bit of kit, then I'm going to start making music. No, he almost actively thinks the opposite. He's like, what's the least amount of equipment that I can make music with? And I just think that is I live in the industry of selling things to people, and I buy gear all the time. I really do. And I am so guilty of this, as we all are to some extent at different times, and even Square Pusher, there are things that he has bought himself, that like a big posh mixer and a CS80 that he argues probably doesn't quite need. But yeah, that's something to think about, isn't it? Like, you can make music that complex, that rich, that interesting with just the simplest bit of equipment. A sampler and a sequencer and precious little else. And you can argue that it's possible to make music that complex because you've mastered all of the tools that you have at your disposal. And if you think about some of the most complex music from Aphex as well, the new music that he's writing is implied through interviews. This is basically his setup, his Yamaha TX 816. What's the sampler that he's sort of old, slightly obscure Yamaha sampler that he's got, and a Circlon. And so it is no coincidence that I've got my old Yamaha sampler back, the A4000, and a Circlon, because I'm interested in that idea. I have a lot of input methods. I have a lot of sound generating equipment. And I think it would be interesting if I can master that sequencer. I think there's a lot to be done. They must be onto something. Until I recognize that embracing a simpler aesthetic, or at least embracing a simpler way of making music, and not being dazzled by the blank canvas of the computer so easily, i.e. by not using it, which is ironic, isn't it? Because I'm basically using their anti-gear fetishism as a way of fetishizing samplers and sequences. But, oh well, I've got them, so I don't have to buy them again. And that, I think, neatly brings us on to talking about Mr. Adrian Utley. And I say neatly because one of the themes, spoiler alert, that we talk about is this whole idea of being one person and a tape machine. And that is exactly what Squarepusher is all about. And by which I mean, the glory of electronic music making is that you, just as a person in your little room with a complex machine like a modular synth or, an effects box or something flexible that you really know and has broad range, that broad ranged instrument and a tape machine, that's all you really need. And you can produce all the music in your imagination with that setup. And that's what Squarepusher is doing, and Aphex, and of course, a friend of whom is Mr. Adrian Utley. And that's what Adrian loves and does. He is a sort of synth collector, and we do talk about this. But he's very quick to point out, he's like, but I use this stuff. I have this stuff because I use this stuff. I don't like to keep things around just to collect for its own sake. I really do use these things. When we talk about his various sort of, why, I ask him kind of, why do you collect stuff? Or what is it that causes it to stick around? And so this is a kind of sprawling conversation. I actually met Adrian. I realised first met him 7 years ago now. The eagle-eared people amongst yourselves have worked out, there is a couple of videos that are online where Adrian is talking about the Arturia Mini Brute. This was when the Mini Brute first came out. And there's this video where Adrian kind of just explores the Mini Brute and is just chatting. And the voice behind the camera, you may recognise, is me from many years ago, before sort of roughly at the same sort of time as I began making videos. And then there's the second video where it's me and Adrian just walking around his synth collection and just chatting about the gear. And those videos have been very popular and with good reason. And it's not myself, it's Adrian. He is just a brilliantly likable person. He's just the nicest possible man that you could hope to meet. The nicest man in the synth industry, or the music industry, I should say. Even though he describes himself as a complete arse or whatever in this interview. He's never been an arse to me. He's always been the nicest person possible. And I've always enjoyed chatting about synths with him immensely. And so that's what we do. We just sit and chat about synths and making music. And so, I don't think he needs much more introduction. The day that we met, I think was the day or the day after the Portishead album Dummy had turned 25. And this was conducted in his Bristol studio. There's a couple of moments. If you're watching the video side, Adrian grabs a guitar at one point, but is sort of looking around the room because we're surrounded by his synths, or at least part of his synth collection, because it's much bigger than could fit in that room comfortably. So yes, this was conducted in his house on a Saturday morning in Bristol. Gotta love Bristol. What a city. So, without any further ado, allow me to introduce Mr. Adrian Utley. Cheers.
ATCs are my speakers. Yeah.
And you've got NS10s and Auratones.
Yeah.
We were talking about this was your tannoys in the kitchen, which...
These would have been tannoys.
What was the model of tannoys that you said?
Well, I've got Little Red and Little Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little Red's upstairs, waiting for a job.
And what are those floor standers that you've got in your living room?
Oh, do you remember them?
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Yeah, well, I figured they were Kefs, but then
they're Spenders.
Spenders.
Yeah, and they're made by this weird, they're BBC reference monitors.
Yeah.
If you get, and that whole thing, we can talk about that forever, but hi-fi is difficult. I bought loads of it and I sold most of it.
I was chatting to...
you can't turn the treble up on the really good amps.
This guy... George at UDO, which is a Bristol synth company. They're making a new...
I know George.
Yeah, George Hearn.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy.
He's really cool. He's really lovely.
Yeah, are you talking to him?
Yeah.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah. Say hi.
Yeah,
I've seen him for ages.
Yeah, I saw him last night at this party, and he was he's developing a new synth.
I know, he's always doing that. No, he brings various versions over to me.
Yeah.
Sorry. He brings various versions. Are you recording now? You are?
Yes, yeah.
He brings various versions over the years. Me and Will saw one, a polysynth, really cool.
He did the 008, but he's doing this new one called the Super 6,
right?
Which is like inspired. I think he's rightly keen to say it's not a Jupiter 8 or anything. It's not a Roland, but it clearly looks like a Jupiter 6, but it sounds like some kind of futuristic Jupiter where he's got this binaural thing where it creates, it's either 12 voices non-binaural or 6 voices binaural, so that it's doing different things in the left and right. And when you play, I was just trying at this Super Booth show in Berlin and like just holding down a chord and just like, if you'd looked across, it would have looked like I sort of stopped functioning. Just like, you're just entranced by this kind of tone that it makes. It really has a sound that is special.
That's interesting, because
it's like,
I don't often hear that in new synthesizers,
It's kind of it. It's like I was like looking for the no one makes a Jupiter 8, and I love that. I'm a real sucker for that particular sound. It's just
incredible.
They do just sound great. It's just such a classy, lovely tone, and
I think some of those old synths, which is why it's interesting that George is making something that doesn't sound like an old synth, if you like. Jupiter-y. But this chair's squeaky, isn't it? Should I get on a box?
No, it's all right.
Is it all right?
Yeah, it's fine.
I think a lot of modern synths sound like old synth, are trying to sound like old synths. So you might, it's very arrogant to say you might as well buy the old one because they are actually very expensive. But in a way, the old ones have that and more. There's more. But what they don't have is that, which is you're not going to get a binaural Oberheim. It's not going to happen, is it?
Beautiful.
No, I mean that that Korg I've got, 3200, is a most incredible sound. Especially if you bung it through space, it's shocking, but it's not binaural or any of that stuff, And
it's you could see they were trying to achieve that by putting like the chorus circuit in the Juno 6 and 60.
Yeah, and that's got chorus in it.
Yeah,
I think that's right. They're trying to make it move and be bigger.
Yeah,
which is
But overcoming it in the case of the Juno, I think they were almost like hand wringing for the fact that it only has one oscillator, and it's like you're not going to get that kind of animated sound, and it's
but they created something else on the way. I think there are amazing synths.
Who is it? Someone was saying. I was just reading some really really old copy, like news copy, or it was someone talking about synths and was saying how the beauty of acoustic instruments is they're very alive, and every moment they're doing interesting. Yes. It's David Vorhaus. David Vorhaus, and he was talking about how. With synthesizers, you really have to work to make them feel alive.
Yeah.
And that the job of work of a synthesist should be to work and make it sparkle and crackle and come to life, because the static tones that a synth makes are very boring. He's like,
I disagree and agree with that. Yeah, because I think I agree on the level that and often Will Gregory and I talk about this. There's a thing called. I'm going to have to have a look because it's a good thing. Touche. Do you know them?
Touche? Expressive-E, yes, I know them really well.
So you can set, because I was talking to them early days when it was a prototype, and they brought it to put into my, for me to try with my stuff. And I think the modular, if you've got modular, you can get into lots of stuff.
Yeah.
You can route that touchpad to quite a few different things.
Yeah, it's based on the own Martineau, with the pressure concept.
Which is, I've always wanted one of them, so it's really cool. So that depending on how you set that patch up, and you could even actually, with Eurorack and stuff, you can affect reverb time and stuff. So you are actually going to make this patch that will be more three-dimensional, which, like Vorhaus is saying, and I think that is part of it. Like, you remember listening to like Bernie Worrell, was it? With Parliament or whatever, using his mini moog, using the Modular, using the bend, using the filter. It was alive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
But then at the same time, I really like Gary Newman, where it's completely still and electronic, and it's not really anything other than just a synth tone.
It's like embracing like drum machines, the fact that they make very rigid, static robotic, and enjoying that as a
absolutely. I love it. I mean, actually, I think an 808, I think the tone ever so slightly changes.
It does, definitely. Yeah, it does.
I've got an old 808 and used it on loads of things, and it's not the same every time it triggers a sound.
They're all like, it's weird. I was talking to the guy who works for a company, or is a company called System 80 in Canada, and he's making a Eurorack version of the 808, and it's beautiful little like module, and it's all there and it works exactly the same way. And he was talking about how, when designing the voicing architecture of like a clone of an 808, you've got a thankless task, because if you make it exact, then people will tell you it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because what people's interpretation of an 808 is now, not only are no 808s factory, absolutely no one has a factory 808 from the old days. They've all aged, and all of the tolerances of capacitors have dried out slightly. So everything has gone wonky.
Yeah.
And then, so he said he was listening to like records from the 80s. Because, of course, the joke is that records are now, those are the time capsules for what 808s were meant to sound like.
Right.
But of course, even those have been mixed and mastered and put through effects and stuff.
Well, very much so.
But but it's sort of that idea that you have to, the time capsule is music, and that's the way you can hear what it is. But then you get into this thing that all of the subsequent cultural 30 years of using these things, and then the term 808 baseline, and using like the 808. Yeah, and it's like, what do you mean? And it's like, what they mean is taking like a sine wavy thing and distorting it and making it much longer. Like, so as a practical example, I said to him, I was like, when I got it, I was like, oh, it's great, but and a clap on his one is fucking murder. Like, it sounds so good. The clap, but the bass drum, I was like, it's too short. It doesn't do the sort of infinite decay thing, and it's because they don't do that. He's like Scout's Honor. They don't do that, and they never did. And it's just, and actually, really, what I realised was that I've got the Tip Top bass drum 808 module, and the guy at Tip Top made it so it did infinite decay.
It's longer, well, you kind of want that sometimes, but you could put a sine tone. You don't need to have to do that. But no, I think so. I mean, I love the fact that an 808. I used to talk about Jeff to Jeff about this, and they don't swing like a 909 can swing.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I feel different about it now, but for a long time I always thought they didn't sound right when they swing.
Yeah.
They don't sound like an 808. You can get the swing from somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Program something else that swings with it if you want that. There's something kind of a little sacred about them. They're kind of and the kick drum isn't long, so you enjoy the instrument as it is, I think. But I mean, listening to Billie Eilish recently, and loads of 808 on there, lots of long sine tones. I mean, it's about music in the end, isn't it? And it sounds great, that stuff. Yeah.
That's quite. I heard music quite bonkers. I've listened. I was watching Glastonbury. It was Glastonbury, wasn't it? She was there.
Yeah, she was. Yeah,
and I was just like, "Who is this?" I felt very old. It was like, but And
well, I think I was really interested in that because I was listening. My kids are into it as well.
Yeah.
And strangely, they said, "What do you think of Billie Eilish, Dad? We hate her." And I said, well, I think she's cool, actually. I listened to her, and the programming's bloody amazing.
Yeah.
There's no reverb or anything,
it's all really, like, close. It's almost like that ASMR thing that people get, it's like people whispering into microphones and like, becoming YouTube, like, making a fortune on YouTube because they have whole channels dedicated to these sound
kids are
things.
Into that as well. It's mental, isn't it? But then because they thought... Because thank goodness my kids still think I'm slightly cool. So they said, oh, she must be cool then. That's not going to last.
You've done well. Like,
I've done all right.
I think you have.
I'd say 10% of the time they're like that with me. The rest of the time I'm just an arse, An old fuddy-duddy who knows fuck all.
This is also cool for me. You're going to need to get some
you'll get there.
To be cool.
But I was talking old synths. I just watched the remastered version of the longer edit of Apocalypse Now. Do you know that soundtrack?
No, not
Fucking
at all.
Hell, man. Honestly,
I've seen it like once, I think.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, get it. It's incredible.
Is it? It's a synthy.
Yeah,
yeah. It's like
it's Coppola's dad doing orchestration, and then you've got people like Patrick Gleason and who work with Herbie Hancock and all those, you know, and a whole raft of people. Actually, what's his name? Krause from
Bernie
Beaver and Krause.
No, that's someone else. Don't know.
Well, you know, the guy who worked with the Beatles in the 60s and they made a lot of records. Well, he was actually a demonstrator for Moog synthesizers.
He's Bernie Krause.
Bernie Krause.
That's why I heard the name. And that's why I was like, because from synth history.
Yeah, exactly. He was involved with the sales of, but he was also a programmer for lots of people, and the Beatles included, you know, possibly the Rolling Stones, I don't know. But when they were all like, oh, we've got to have a modular Moog.
Well, yeah, and there was no one else. They just didn't know anyone else who knew how to use the machine.
And fantastically, you know, you hear, and I don't know whether he's involved in this, but on Abbey Road and stuff, I mean, that was such an influence on me, the sound of the Moog on Abbey Road. As a kid, I didn't even realise it.
I still don't really know where the bits of Moog are on Abbey Road.
Oh, they're all over the place.
Yeah, they're blended in perfectly. So
which I absolutely love. Yeah. I love that. I love really straight synths, but I also like synths when they're mixed with the real instruments. Yeah. And Abbey Road, like Something, you know the tune Something? There's tons of Moog on that.
No.
Obviously Maxwell Silver Hammer, but huge. Even just like masses of white noise just on it. So they were really enjoying having that thing, you know. Yeah. But anyway, Apocalypse Now also a blended orchestral and synthesizers. There's a guy playing, I really don't remember this, or I won't remember it. It's a wind instrument before Huey and all of those things from the early... late 70s.
What, not a synth wind thing?
It's a synth, and it's got a wheel thing on, like a canister.
I saw Sun Ra's orchestra doing, and they had that. Like, where
it would be that.
I don't know what it was.
Incredible. So somebody's playing one of them. I'll tell you who it is. It's Steiner.
As in,
it's like Steiner Parker.
Yeah. He did a
one of those guys.
Steiner wind instrument.
Yes, that's exactly. Yeah. It's one of them, and they and so somebody is playing that. He's playing that, and they've got a real flute, which I think is Carmine.
Nice.
Coppola, who's Coppola's dad. Yeah. So I've been fascinated by that for probably 30 years or so.
You mean like the perfect blending of acoustic?
Well, to me they are. Yeah. There's a real flute and a synthesized flute. Yeah. And then there's tons of strings and there's layers and layers. And I just read that they had no time restriction because the whole thing was bonkers anyway. Yeah. So there's lots of people working on it, and they could work. Coppola would listen to it and go, "Nah, that's not it." And they'd go and do something else.
2 months.
And you can imagine in those days, although Profit had arrived by then, it was late 70s, wasn't it? But anyway, I'd have a listen to that because in terms of pure synthesis, and actually the people at the very top of being able to program and good orchestral writers, and it's a phenomenal soundtrack and a fantastic blend of electronics and acoustics.
My one experience of that sort of thing, I went and interviewed and met the guy Craig Leon, who did he did this Back to Moog album.
I remember
a couple of years ago on the System 55. Yeah, and he was doing exactly this. He was like, his absolute end goal was like the perfect hybridization of acoustic and synth. He was like, you know. And we're talking about layers. He's like, if you deconstructed all of the layers of my mixes, you'd be like, what the hell is that little noise? And there's like a little squiggle here and a little like a tiny little thing, but added up to the articulation, it creates this.
Was he doing Bach?
Yeah, so it's doing like arrangements. And interestingly, he was saying how with a lot of Bach music, I mean, I don't know anything about it, but he's like, Bach didn't necessarily dictate what instruments were supposed to be played. Well, it's not known, and he was just simply writing music, and it's been up to interpretation to work out what his intention was, to what instrument would play what line and how to do it. And so that's left it naturally open to being interpreted and played by other instruments.
It's such a fantastic. He's such an incredible composer, and. His inventions, on piano and.
Do you know he was 17 when he wrote Toccata and Fugue in D minor?
Yeah, most probably.
Like fucking.
And actually, this is heartening. He had a lot of children. Right. I think many children, and lived in a small house wherever it was, and he used to lock himself in his room, and no children were allowed in there. Well, you know what that's like. His house is described as being like a beehive. You know, 'cause there's so much fucking noise from the children. Yeah, I mean, I know exactly how he feels.
And he made music.
And he couldn't
even have headphones.
No.
It was Beethoven that went deaf, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Beethoven.
Okay, yeah, just checking.
The thing about Bach is that he was an absolute expert at what he did.
Yeah.
In the last part of his life, when he was the same age as me, which was very old in those days,
of course.
he travelled to meet Frederick, who Prince Frederick, I think it was, German guy who was really into music. And the thing then was that you'd get a theme and then you would have to enlarge on it, improvise basically.
Right.
And they had set up Bach. Maestro was arriving at the court, but he was only a lowly man, obviously compared to a king, and they gave him a chromatic line, just a line, chromatic, and the others had improvised on this and made stuff, and he absolutely smashed it. He came from like a 2-day trip from Leipzig to wherever on a coach. You can imagine what that's like as an old fella with track roads. Got off and they immediately dropped this on him, you know, and he just absolutely smashed it, apparently. And you can hear that now. It's a 6-part invention. And just the interweaving, he was an absolute master of that stuff. It was a discipline of that time. And
do you mean combining lots of different lines? Or
start with one line, then another line starts underneath it, and they complement each other, so to speak. But your mind is constantly being... There's 2-part inventions, and you know, and also bigger ones. So you that's why it's so good for your brain, I think, listening to Bach, because it's, if you listen to Glenn Gould, for instance, the piano player, you could hear all these different lines, and like you say, they would be on different instruments. They could be on different instruments, but these are probably written for harpsichord and organ, possibly. And it's an incredible thing. So it is natural for somebody like Wendy Carlos to want to do that, who studied that kind of music anyway, but it works so well with the synthesizer because there are, defined areas of sonic or of pitch. And it's a fantastic thing. It works really well. I think I prefer Wendy Carlos's stuff. I think she had a deeper understanding of Bach. I'm probably treading on very thin ground here, but also the synth wouldn't stay in tune, which is absolutely awesome, and must have driven her completely bonkers. I did meet her actually in New York once.
Did you?
Friend. Yeah, incredible.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible.
She's not writing music or like available to the world. She's obviously still alive, and it's like
busy.
I guess she's just retired, is she, or does she make music? Well,
I met her something like 20 years ago.
Right.
So I don't know what she's doing now, but then she was doing stuff, archiving things. And she had those big digital synths, not synclavier, but that kind of thing.
She really embraced it, like all
it moved on.
Synth technology.
Exactly. So the big Moog that is still there with the huge bespoke built vocoder, which is a huge, great big rack of stuff on its own, built by Bob Moog.
Is that one that will be on like Clockwork Orange soundtrack?
I'm almost certain it would be. It's incredible.
It's like proper hair-raising vibes.
It's totally brilliant.
The Clockwork Orange soundtrack, full stop.
It's incredible, isn't it? But also, actually, one of my favourite pieces of music is from The Shining, the opening sequence of The Shining. It's incredible.
Oof. Is that not Penderecki or whatever?
Penderecki is involved. That's not involved in with that.
No. It blew my mind when I learned that a lot of the music was just, a wacky Polish composer as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously there's the Wendy Carlos stuff, and I love it. But it's like a lot of that music was chosen. It wasn't specifically for those scenes. That incredible choral sort of like.
Kubrick does that, doesn't he? He did it on. I mean, actually, it's a master stroke to get Wendy to do the record, to do the soundtrack for Clockwork Orange, because there's a guy who's into Beethoven, but it's set in the future. Why don't we do it on a massive Moog? And you have this otherworldly sound to it, which is completely brilliant. No, I think the Penderecki thing is where he says, or when he's typing. All work, no play, whatever.
And it's those kind of really spooky, like
kind of string
almost
stuff.
Like atonal kind of soundscapes.
Yeah,
I mean, they are.
It's an incredible piece of music. I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah, I don't know it.
I bought the score of it, actually, because I wanted to know what was going on. It is amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that, Wendy did fight with the sound of the Moog. Oh, that's it. We were talking about her embracing technology. But the Moog, when it was new, she was in part of the development of it.
She was,
so it was
absolutely.
Buying a modern
envelope
synth.
generators and things.
Exactly.
I'm fairly sure were like Wendy saying,
that's what I heard.
We need articulation systems for these. Yeah. Bob going, well, that's how I could do it like this.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so it was cutting edge technology, really. So it's really obvious that she would go with the digital stuff as it comes out, because it's but I think that's completely genius programming, and done on like a 4-track or an 8-track bounce.
I think it was an 8-track.
An 8-track.
But you would have to bounce and commit layer upon layer upon layer.
And where do you start?
I literally don't.
Where do you start? with a shitty click? What do you start with?
Maybe you don't. Like, I guess you start with one line. I really don't know.
You'd have to start with one line, because there isn't...
Yeah, I do have a fetishization of the idea of like, I'd love to just have like a big modular and a reel-to-reel, but I can't. I can't play. Is the problem, and it requires such
be able to play,
an innate ability to react in a moment and play along and layer and know what's coming and instantly anticipate and slowing and pushing. It's actually what I was talking to Gaz Williams about. He was saying that he'd been delighted to find that Melodyne could extract the tempo from performances. So he was able to record a guitarist and allow the guitarist to do the initial first pass completely with no click track, and then to like impose the subtle movement and timing of his guitar performance onto the arrangement, so they could then lay out other elements as bricks, but they would move smoothly. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I know exactly what you mean.
The computer respected the human's performance.
Yeah.
And of course, in the case of Wendy Carlos, it's like she would just have to know that maybe she didn't slow down and speed up that much.
I think she probably
maybe
did.
She did play to a metronome. I don't know.
No, it's unlikely. I would think, but it's. I've often thought, where did she actually start with that? And I've watched on some old film of her mixing it on one of those UA boards with the giant knobs on it.
Yeah.
And the filter stuff, I know this because Will Gregory's Moog Group ensemble does a lot of Bach, and although I don't have the keyboard chops to play that, I do add white noise and stuff into this to make the subtle kind of Moogie type things that happen in there. And it is about, it cannot be to a click, and the dynamics are really important. So everybody's using the filter as the dynamic,
the volume knob,
if you like, but also timbre as well,
right? Yeah,
for pianissimo and forte. So it's I still think what's it called, Swish on Bach, is a most incredible piece of work.
And it was like. What was the stat? It was like in the Billboard charts for like 2 years.
It's ridiculous.
It was one of the best-selling pieces of classical music.
And that Glenn Gould, who is, in my mind, well, he's one of the best exponents of playing Bach for me, anyway, and a lot of other people. It was his favourite recording of Bach, which is weird, isn't it? Because the classical world were like, what's that,
But if you like a harpsichord, how can you not like a synth, in a sense? They're very like, and a synth can be far more dynamic. The harpsichord is naturally an undynamic instrument.
It is, yeah.
It's all about timing, Yeah. It's interesting, that idea of like synths taking on more of the dynamics and expression of the human player, and that was, again, it was another conversation I'd had, but like these are things that are like the things that are stuck in my craw was chatting to the guy Ian Williams from Battles, the band Battles.
I do, we put them on at ATP,
And so he was saying, I was like, what do you think is the future of music? And he's like, I like when an electronic music instrument, like he was talking about touch plates, and it was actually the make noise pressure points, where you can press down, and depending on how much you push your finger, it creates control voltage.
Yes.
He's like, I like things like that. I like ways where the errors and the quivers of human dynamics can be allowed to come through, but with a synth. And if you listen to their music, it's and when I saw them play live, they're almost intentionally avoiding a click track. They're almost intentional. Like he has an octatrack, and he's like putting things, and he's using the fader on the octatrack to be the time knob on a delay, and he's really embracing that kind of slow, the slow push pull, and he's taking whole elements of the track, and it's like he's put it through, you know, a delay, but with an infinite repeat, and it's just, you're hearing the fully wet delay. Right. He just lets the whole thing slow and grind and then come forward and back, and it's sort of embracing the imperfections, like actively fighting the idea of a click track. I think is a commendable. Like,
I agree. I mean, I came up through not having click tracks, you know, recording in studios, and still do. It's really useful if you want to edit, but we've all got into that mode of like, I need to edit.
Yeah.
Whereas I imagine if you're in a Nashville studio with a wicked sounding room, or, you know, whatever, the last thing you want is a click.
Yeah.
There's really good players that were brought up not playing to click. I think we've all learned to play with click. I just made a jazz record a couple of months ago to tape, to a 1/2-inch tape, with lovely mics and fantastic players. And there's no click.
Yeah.
It's just music played really well.
In real time.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't work for all of that. You couldn't have Billie Eilish without click, possibly. But they might even be slowing clicks down and stuff to get that. It's another world. They're distinctly different worlds, I think.
Yeah.
And I think I'm kind of down with all of them. You know, whatever. I loved it when Atari came out and everything was rigid. I loved it.
Yeah.
You know, and you could have, you know, beats that you made with on your sampler with Atari, rock solid. When I first got Apple, after my Atari, I wanted to slave the Mac to the Atari because it just wasn't tight enough, you know. It just didn't. The samples weren't.
So you like rigidity because you wanted the computer thing, or you just wanted the control, like you wanted the ability to slip it and have the slip be exactly right.
Well, I wanted, you know, if you had, for instance, like when we made Dummy, or you know, any of those records, Dummy and the second record. We had an Atari and an S1000, or a couple of S1000s.
I love that you said that. I literally put it on yesterday. I was like, and the very first, like that first beat, in my mind, I just saw the big white face of that kind of sampler.
Yeah.
And it's so like, it's, I find it interesting how it's like it's a band, but it's very electronic, and it's very like, it feels like the kind of music that could have just been a person in their bedroom.
Well, it could have.
It's weird, and it takes a whole band's discipline to like make it controlled.
Well, it's because we made our own samples, and a lot of the time, you know. So, but with all this in mind, that's another massive subject. But what I do like, and Jeff did the beats, obviously.
Love that scooped beat sound as well. Like,
what's that?
What's on the first? I now can't think of the name of the track. I'm on the spot. Mistron, where it's like the beat is like you've EQ'd almost all of the center or something out of it. It's like hollow.
Yeah,
it's
there's
like,
a lot of
like really
a lot of brutal EQ on there. Yeah,
I like that. I think it's great. And I would never have. I don't think I would ever have made that choice. Do you know what I mean? It's like if that would be wrong. But it's not.
No, I mean, actually, we did come up against problems in that when you turn it up really loud, which we always did, there was so many weird rogue frequencies in there because of the mids that were not sorted out.
Yeah.
That it had its own little problems in there. But I think the thing is that, you know, what was exciting for me was, and I'm less excited by now within Mac programs, within Pro Tools and stuff, there's a kind of rigidity that I'm not mad about, unless keep going back to Billie Eilish, but it's just because I was listening with the kids last night, and there's a solid sound to that. It's really, that works to me. That works. It's not trying to sound like a live band.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is live stuff on there, but the thing about sampling at that time was it was halfway between live playing in a studio and utterly rigid. And I'm discarding many years of 80s synth pop and Human League and all that was solid. Well, actually, that was pretty edgy early on. Not in time, some of it. But hip hop was based on, you know, really cool players, which had to pull and push and pull within the thing. So you could chop up beats and make them really spot on, and which is what we all did. And for me, I was fascinated by, you'd take a break and you'd chop it up and you'd have to slightly detune a section of it to make it be in time. But what that did, if you had any ambience in the background, it would change the pitch slightly. So the pitch would drop. Now, these are all the things that we used to think about with Portishead.
Yeah.
Reverbs that were not in the bar, I'm going to be really geeky, were not in the bar that you're hearing. They were like, if you're going to take a sample, and this is a break, say drums, the bar before might have had a vocal in it, and the reverb is hanging over. You know what I'm saying?
So you get just at the very
but
beginning.
It might be incredibly subtle
yeah.
amount. But what it becomes when you tune it, you can hear it tuning.
Yeah.
You might not even have been aware of it in the reverb there, but it'll just change pitch with your tuning. So then when you chop things up and change bits of it, the tuning will go,
Yeah.
And that to me was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
As somebody coming from playing, and that couldn't happen in the world that I lived in. So when I first heard hip hop, I was thinking, what the fuck is going on? That's this amazing atmosphere is changing. So for me, Atari and an S1000 or an S950 were a revelation for me.
Yeah, it's a wonder. Like I was listening. I'm an idiot. I've never properly put a lot of them on, but like old Kate Bush records, and just like the use of Fairlight and the creator.
Brilliant.
You can hear like her delight at the options that were being presented. You know what I mean? Like, and the kinds of things that you're like, fuck, I can make a song out of this sound. Like,
well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that at that time, technology moved so slowly, really, compared to now. You know, we've already talked about earlier about a million other things that have come out just recently.
Yeah.
And things are moving on all the time with the Eurorack modular systems.
Yeah.
Not only are they moving on in terms of there are new modules all the time, your own system.
Yeah.
It's like you've taken a mini Moog and gone. I go and see your mini Moog, for instance, and go, oh, where's the oscillator gone? Why have you not got 3 oscillators? Why have you got 20 oscillators? And why are they over on the right, and not on the left? Because everything is fluid within Eurorack, really.
Yeah.
And most of us go, oh, do you know what? I want that oscillator over here now. All right, do you know what? I'm fed up with that. I'll get this filter. So it's all changing all the time. And there's one doesn't really get the same relationship as
That's the only thing that kills me. Like, as an example of that, I went to a synth meet in Peterborough, as you do. Yeah. And there was this guy, do you know Basil Brooks? Have you heard of that man?
Yeah, I do, from the old days.
Yeah, well, Basil Brooks.
He was in Zorch.
Is it? Well, I don't know if he was. I don't know if he's ever in a band or.
Yeah, he was. I know his brother.
He's basically this guy's got a synth-E.
Yeah.
And he has had that synth-E since he was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And he's. I mean, apologies to Basil if he's not, but I'm pretty sure he's in his 60s.
Yeah, he will be.
And it's like, I'm like, good grief. And you know, he was there and he's really enthusiastic. Like, he's about 7 foot tall. He's kind of like, he's like showing me it, and he's got like ears on it, on his system.
I've seen it.
Every mod has been done on it. It's like, there are pictures of it on the internet.
Green ears.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's got green ears.
Well, I know his brother from Dartmoor.
Right.
And he had that synth for a while. I think a dog shat in it. In one of them. I think.
Can happen.
Into the patch board.
Fuck. What?
Yeah, grim.
That's fucking what? Of all the places to shit.
I know. And
into
it was
the
not
Guild patch board.
Like, it was bad.
And they're expensive, those little. Oh.
I think I tore it apart. Robin probably might have had to do that.
Well, but my point was like, I'm at a Eurorack synth meet, and he's showing me. He's like, yeah, I've had it since I was 16. My uncle was he was like a sound film composer, a sound designer.
Well, that's the guy who owned that synth over there.
Right.
That's Ed Williams, his uncle, who's died, unfortunately, 3 years ago.
Right.
I bought that from Ed.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So that's their uncle.
Wow. Okay. Right. Well, there's
he owned the EMS company.
Right. Okay. Well, there's a connection for you.
Yeah.
But you know, as he's telling me this, I'm looking at it. I'm like, fucking hell! Like, I'm like, this whole Eurorack thing. I'm like, it was exactly as you said. It's like, when will we ever develop a lifelong... And I mean, I'm having a lifelong relationship with my Eurorack synth, but as you say, it's a fluid one. It's one where I'm having a relationship with the format and incarnations of it. And that's in a weird way, it is always this. It is all the same synth because it's a Eurorack synth and it does the kinds of things that I make Eurorack synths do. But again, it was just this idea of like, you buy a guitar and it's your guitar and you know that instrument back to front. You know what it's good for and what it's bad for. And I worry that we're going to lose some of that. But I suppose there will always be instruments in our studio that, I've got a Juno 60 and I'll never part with it. And it's
they're amazing.
Yeah, it's
and you can't mod. Well, you could mod them, but you wouldn't.
I actually have modded.
You have.
Yeah, I've got like a special chip. And it just adds a few little like secret things behind the hood.
Oh, right.
Including detune, which is otherworldly. When you
across the keyboard?
Yeah, it does like a kind of like like random detuning of the entire voice. Obviously, the Juno 60 is very stable.
Yeah.
Ruthlessly stable.
Yeah.
It's digitally timed.
Yeah.
And then, but what it does is it just adds that woozy CS80 quiver or like sort of wooze to it. It sounds to sound very Aphex Twin. It instantly reminds me of those beautiful, like on some of his records. Exactly. Yeah, PSS, PS3.
I think he's got the 3000. He had three of them.
I think he's got. There's a picture with him, and he's got three of them.
Will's got one now.
One of those.
Bought one off him.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. I think even he realised that 3 was probably more.
Well, they came from Coldcut, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's true. I did hear that. So Matt Black had them.
That's right. Yeah. There's a big long story about that, but I don't know. Do you know what? In the end, you do what you do, and I think that whatever gives you joy. I remember watching I Dream of Wires, is it? Which was about, like I said, it was about 3 days too short. That for me, I needed more.
Right, okay. I thought it was quite long. I watched the 4 hour cut. I was like, this is long even for me.
I can take any amount of synths you can throw at me. But I think. There was one section, I might be wrong, but I seem to remember it was a white synth. I can't remember which, Modular. And the guy came home.
Is this maybe Modcan?
Modcan, yeah, Canada, possibly.
Like big 5U-esque thing. Like
no,
that,
I don't think it was.
Oh.
Anyway, it's in there, and the guy's, he never plays out. He comes home, and it's like, you used a really good word earlier when we were chatting, and I can't remember what it was now. It's about... nest or something like that.
Nest building.
So you've got this thing, and I understood. I've always been sort of skeptical that why are you getting all this stuff if you're not making music to go out in the world? And then there's too much of that as well on YouTube occasionally. Stuff that's not that interesting because we've got absolute sensory overload nowadays. I don't know how my kids can even deal with it, to be honest with you. The amount of stuff that comes at us. I'm sure we'll suffer in the future from that kind of overload of information. But anyway, that's another thing. But he said he just that's his. He comes home and he does that, and it's about the building of it and how it looks. And also just sitting there making music, not for anyone else, just for him.
Not recording a note.
And not recording any of it, And I think, okay, I get it. That's your thing, and that's completely fine. Yeah. So I'm never going to be cynical about that again.
No, not at all. It's no different to someone having a guitar in their living room.
And
all they do is just play Wonderwall on it or something. Yeah. And it's just like, because what you're doing in the moment is unwinding from your day. And
exactly.
You're relaxing as a human being, and it's like, you can't argue with that. It's fine. It's a different pursuit to make it. It's an aspect of making music, and it all just depends on just being honest with yourself in terms of what you do you really want to achieve. And I get guilty, but if I don't, I do want to make music with these things. I want to.
Well, you do, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do. I don't have as much time as I like. I'm making videos of things and doing demos, but in a funny way, I get to make music and having a baby. In those videos, I get to make music. And, I was talking to someone who said, he was like, "Oh yeah, you should release. Have you not released the things that are in some of your videos?" And I'm like, "No, because I literally recorded that for that video, and I don't have." do you know what I mean? It's like I've not recorded it in a way that I can like make a track out of it now. It's kind of done, so I could sample it and work with it, but I can't get the sound back, and I would need to leave the synth on so I could do other parts. But he kind of said, and he was right. He was like, well, actually, sort of making the video is almost your release. You've kind of done.
Yeah, I've watched some of them. They're really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
But you could actually quite easily sit down and go, okay, I'm going to make a video, but actually I'm not going to make a video. I'm going to make a track.
Make a track.
Yeah. You could do it because it's your head, your hands, your gear.
Exactly. Yeah. I did have a weird moment. I was like, am I better at writing music when there's a camera on it? And you feel more like you're on stage. And
I love the psychology of music. I think that's a really valid point, because you know, it's really hard sometimes to make music and to get that moment, and I think you need to record virtually everything you do, and we can now, you know.
Yeah, is it Peter Gabriel that had like it was all set to be recording all the time? Yeah, just in case someone did
only 300 tracks,
maybe
or
too much. Yeah. But it's that idea that like you when the red light is on, people change.
You really do.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how much you do it. And I was just doing a session, I was telling you, down in Provence in France, in a La Fabrique studio, which is an amazing studio with incredible players, old school players, sight reading, you know, played on records we all know, massive records we all know, Michael Jackson stuff. And you just go, the red light goes on, and it's still the same kind of slight feeling, even though they've done it. Yeah, even though they've done it since '69, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's not obvious, but I could, you know, and if you're clever as a producer, you get that recording before anybody's really known what's going on. And as a session player, you hope that person, when I'm producing, I'm recording, you know, I'm almost uptight about, I don't even give a fuck if it's in tune. If something's happening, let's just record it, you know, because it could be it. And I hope as a player that when I first get in the studio, I'm not going to say to somebody, are you recording? Because that kind of breaks the illusion. Vibe. I'm playing, I can hear the track and I'm playing and I'm thinking, I really hope you're fucking recording this, because actually I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Feeling good.
And nobody said, are you ready? Yes. Oh, can I just another, I think your G's just a bit out of tune. By then you fucked it, you know, so, you know what I mean? Not always, but it's a very tenuous thing. And the red light syndrome, it's a big deal. And if we can somehow get over that, I mean, it's a bit better with Pro Tools because it's not like you're burning tape, you know, which we used to. Yeah, that's a little bit scary because there's that much tape and you'll fuck up a recording for everyone. That's another thing. Playing with other players that you really respect, you don't want to fuck it up because you'll fuck up their good performance. Yeah. Especially if you're spilling sound onto their mics and stuff, you know.
Would you wear out? When you're doing like multiple, if you're on a reel to reel, can you actually damage it if you're doing multiple takes over?
Well, I've heard about like Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah, was backwards and forwards all the time. They were tracking on it.
Yeah, that tape must have been the most like.
You could see through it apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
God knows. Yeah.
Like you can get those are floating around, the 24 tracks of Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah. They're very entertaining.
I think all of those things are amazing. Yeah. It's a bit naughty to have them, but
I suppose I don't know how they've gotten out. Well,
because people digitize now. Right. Because tape is you have to have it baked. Yes, and then transfer it quickly onto another format that might not last forever. Who knows?
Yeah, indeed. Well, transfer it because it's lasted perfectly well for 35 years. Now you're going to put it in digital. Which is exactly. It terrifies me that like the future proofing, like what is going to happen to all the photos I've taken with this device,
and all the films we bought on iTunes. Yeah. Where are they?
I don't know. They're in a computer in California somewhere.
Yeah, because I want mine on a hard drive. Yeah. Or at least that's a scary thing. Universal building burnt down. Did you hear about this?
No.
It was quite hidden, but a friend of mine sent me a link to a news item.
I think I might have. Oh my god! It lost a lot of music. There was a lot of music in their archives that was
absolutely lost. You know, like things like Aretha Franklin and I think it was Universal, but I mean huge records that we all know. The masters
have they not digitized the collection?
I think they have been digitized, but the actual.
But they've now lost the masters.
They've lost the masters. Yeah.
It's sad.
But the record exists, so it's like you know having a painting by Picasso and not having the drawings. You know, we've still got the painting.
But we've still got like a billion like cheap posters of it.
We got that, yeah. True.
And at least you've got backups of like dummy, and you've got 10 million backups like in people's homes.
We have got various ones in different places, and they're digitized and stashed away. Yeah. But I find it. I mean, actually, the Bee Gees, "Staying Alive." Have you ever heard that Morrissey track?
No.
Fucking hell, man. If you're into production,
with all the harmonies on separate bits.
Well, there's all that. But what is really interesting is that. It's a really groovy track, and there's things like and you listen to the drum kit. Same with some Michael Jackson stuff as well, like the Jackson 5 ABC.
Oh, I've never.
You listen to the multi-tracks of that. Jesus Christ, it's. I don't think it was done with a click. I mean, in those days, it did have a click. You could have a click.
Yeah, of course.
It's just so groovy, but really sloppy, and. Same with the Bee Gees. You listen to that "Staying Alive" track.
Feels very tight to me. Like
it's super tight. But when you listen to all of it, it's quite baggy. And and then there's one acoustic guitar, and if you don't put it in, it doesn't sound right. And it's so sloppy. It's absolutely it's just a really grungy acoustic guitar. Is it done
intentionally sloppy?
I don't know. I think it's somebody who wrote the tune. I don't know who's playing it.
Yeah.
But it's super it's not what you would expect. You would not. You go.
But that's the magic of layering, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's like when and it's a difficult thing. Like, I have my performance Eurorack Modular, and one of the scariest or the biggest lessons I've learned is move your hands slowly. And the reason I say move my hands slowly is because the worst thing I can do is when I accidentally just mute something and you realise it's that one element that was holding the whole track together. And you pulled it away and the entire chore's gone. I'm an idiot. Of course it was that. But it's very hard to realise, there's an ensemble of 6 or 7 sounds. And it's very hard to know which of those one sounds is the one you can't get rid of.
Yeah, that's right.
There is one often.
Yeah, that's interesting because that is the glue of certain tracks, isn't it? When you're mixing and creating music, that's a very good point. And actually, that guitar is entirely that. Yeah.
And where it probably sounds wrong or out. This, I think, is why they say you should never EQ things never EQ things in isolation? Do you know what I mean? And especially if you're a really good mix engineer, it's like the things that you would do to a vocal or to a part you would think were wrong, but in the context of a track, because you need to make space for something, but also there's complementary frequencies from other elements that are blending together. It's this idea. A part should be considered as its role in the whole. So the solo is kind of a dangerous tool in a way. That's a lesson that I'm trying to bear in mind because often I solo something and
then EQ,
and
get it perfectly sounding
exactly, and then that's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I remember when I was younger, doing sessions for people, and I got this Fender Twin amp, an old Twin, and a nice old guitar. I can't remember what it was now. Say my 335 or whatever. And back in the day, when I was young, I had this notion of what this guitar should sound like, and I was always surprised when I went in a studio, especially a decent studio where I was doing a session or whatever, what they did to my guitar. And I didn't like it quite a lot of the time because I thought it didn't sound like my amp and my guitar. If it had left it like that, it would not have worked in the track. It needed thinning out. It needed that bass taken out of it. And within the context of the track,
sound,
I mean, it's obvious now, but it's not always obvious as a player, or that you need to do exactly what you said, and it needs to fit in the track. So now it's a really skinny sounding guitar. I would never play guitar like that. That's not my guitar. You know what I mean? Well, your guitar would sound shit if we left it as it was. And you have to know that,
I think that's, my very limited experience of band playing as well. It's half of the battle is learning when to get out of the way and just be respectful and give other people space to perform. It's not about you. It's about
it isn't.
The ensemble.
It really is.
Don't be a dick.
Sometimes it's about you. If you've got if you're in the Cure and you've got to kill a guitar line, it's about you a bit.
But it's just learning to be respectful, learning the sort of the space is I mean, I suppose that's probably true of a great many things.
It really is, yeah. Composition as well.
Having kids as well.
Well, yeah, fucking hell. There is no space. You just need to know that.
Learn that you were not allowed any space.
No, it's very limited.
I was going to ask you about your synth collection. Like, have you got a sort of, with the synths that you've kept, what is it? What drives you to acquire something? Is it a historical? Because you're definitely a bit of a synth collector, and I don't mean that as a bad thing. Because my wife is saying this, like, you are aware you are a collector, right? And I'm like, I thought about it. I was like, I got a DX7 because I really wanted to have a DX7, and it had to be a Mark 1. It had to be the one from 1983. And just because I really like that instrument, but you don't really have any digital synths.
I've got a TX81Z.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Somewhere upstairs, I think.
But so what, I suppose the question is like, what drives, with all of your synths, what is kind of the common thread? What is the appeal? And why do you keep them?
Yeah.
You've got a lot, and you've got a lot more than there is in this room.
That's right.
Yeah.
I consider this to be quite a limited amount. I mean, compared to other people I know, and I feel like I've honed it down to the synths that are useful to me.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it completely. I absolutely love old synths. How to approach this, really? Because over here, these guitars here, that's a 1936 L5. And
when you say 1936, you mean because it was made in 1936?
It was made in 1936. That one was made in 1947. That one was made in 1939. Wow. So I get the geekiness of that, but I also absolutely love those instruments because
of what they, not because of what they are, but just you love those instruments for stuff.
I love what they sound like. I love that this was owned by somebody and played to fuck forever.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's been played. It's a beautiful sounding instrument.
It's in fantastically good condition.
It is.
But of course, it's been loved, isn't it?
Yeah, because they were like the top of the range guitars. It's got knocks and dings on it.
Yeah.
And that one there, you know, that's been. Look how somebody's played that till. But so I feel the same with the synths. That I haven't got these because I'm a collector. All these guitars I've got here and more upstairs, I use them all. I know exactly what they do, and they surprise me as well. So this guitar over here, I can stick it through a fuzz box. You wouldn't think that from a 1939 Charlie Christian guitar. So the synths for me are exactly the same. The modular Moog stuff and its relatives. And all of that stuff that's me and the Beatles and the early days of synthesis.
Yeah.
I'm never ever going to get over the sound of Moogs, as you know. I love
of course.
You got me a modern Moog, which is actually over at Will's.
The Model D,
yeah, which is awesome. That new one
to have like what's good about the old one, but new. Yeah,
and it doesn't go wrong. You hope.
Yeah.
And and I'm getting a relationship with that now.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good. So I've got 3 mini Moogs, one there, one upstairs, and the one that I generally play live now, which is.
And is that because you have the mini Moog? I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, for you, it's the immediacy, and it just sounds fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
And there must be a degree of like it's the history of and the what that instrument. You know, you see people playing it and what it's done to modern music as well.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's why I want the DX7, for that same reason.
Yeah, well, they took over, didn't
by its legacy and its impact on culture.
I remember it in 1984 when I was not interested in synths. By then, had no interest and played in a working men's club, but in a holiday camp band. And the guy had a DX7. It was one of these new ones in 1984. And it had this piano sound on it that we like the best Rhodes sound. I think it's ghastly now, but actually I'm getting there. Back again. But and he also had an Oberheim 4 voice, which sounded, and we just laughed every time he played it because it sounded like a cave full of screaming bats. As soon as he switched it on, it was all out of tune and weird. Yeah,
Let the record state for those who can't see. I can see 4 voices behind Sam up here.
So all of these instruments. The Moog thing we were talking about. Yeah. It's its history. It's its sound. Sometimes it's too big. Generally, it's too big because it's got a lot of low end that you can't use.
It's like your guitar.
You have to
respectfully high pass it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's great. You listen to it and you can take speakers out. I recently, not recently actually, played on Anna Calvi's last record, and all I played was Moog, lots of Moog and Mellotron and stuff. And when we were in the studio doing it, the sound of the Moog was enormous, you know, and we were all laughing, and it was cool, and you know, through the big Westlake monitors or whatever they had, I can't remember now. Very rarely switched them on, but it was great with the Moog, you know. But it had so much bass, you couldn't possibly leave that in the track. Yeah,
that's like the sort of Keith Wakeman. Jesus.
Rick Wakeman. Could be Keith Wakeman.
Keith Wakeman. Well known.
Rick Emerson.
Like mutant. Rick Emerson. He was like saying.
That's his. I love it. Rick Emerson. That's good.
You know, the guy with the cape was saying, he's like, you know, for the first time you could be louder than the guitarist.
Yeah.
That was like, thank God.
Is that what he said?
I think that was his, like, that's why I loved him. And obviously I know you're not his like biggest fan necessarily.
No, I had his records. I think he's cool. I think he's great, actually.
But it's like, I know you know exactly what he means. It's just like, you can, it was an amazing power and very easy to wield, I suppose, because before that you already had the modulars, didn't you? And
and if you take our Odyssey, which was around at the same time, think about Moog is.
You've got a 2600.
I've got a 2600, which is, I love that. Its keyboard's just on the stairs. I haven't managed to put that back yet. I took that to a session, and because it's huge, you can process stuff with it. So everything I've got, I have it for a purpose. I know exactly what it's going to do. I obviously don't know the limits of what it'll do, because it'll always be endless, but I know that if I take a mini Moog, I'm going to be able to get this. That's why I took the 2600, because I know I can get this.
It'll do that.
Yeah, and I can plug my guitar into it and put it through the ring modulator. Or the preamp on a 2600 is amazing. Put a guitar through it and crank it. It sounds like the shittiest transistor amp you've ever heard.
I would really like a 26. Like, just get that idea of like it really pushes my, both of them, that you've got a VCS3 over there, obviously the Ed Williams VCS3.
Yeah.
But, like that idea of both of those have got a kind of science lab aesthetic, which I
they
think
definitely have. Yeah.
And I think what appeals to me when I look at the 2600 is just that, a bit like a modular, but I see such a wonderful assortment of options.
Yeah.
I feel like you've thought of everything I could want to
Yeah, that's right. I believe that.
And then that's very enticing, because it's all there. And and I don't have to worry about that whole thing of like, ooh, should I get a different module? Or do I need this for this? It's like, no, trust that, you know, Alan R. Perlman thought of everything for you, and you can just enjoy that instrument and layer it and squeeze. It's that thing of going, you know, here you are, just you, like a simple instrument and a tape machine, and you can anything's possible.
Well, now you've kind of got to the bottom of what my aesthetic is. It is that.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I think too many possibilities. I don't have the brain for it. Yeah. I don't understand booklet synths, and I love music that's made. Some music that's made on it. Recently met Laurie Spiegel.
Oh, Laurie Spiegel.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
and had a chat with her in her place in New York. It was really interesting, and I know that she, you know, some of the music she made is absolutely fucking amazing. Some of that's booklet stuff, isn't it?
It's just another world of learning a different language.
It really is, and she's a computer designer. You know, her brain works in a different way to me. But I sat and played some country tunes with her on a brilliant old Gibson guitar. It's cool. But I think, that is my aesthetic, really. And yes, up 2600, it doesn't have sync, which the Odyssey does, and I miss that. It doesn't have a high-pass filter, but people tell me you can use the voltage processor, which makes a high-pass. You can
I think there are ways like the on the Moog Mother 32, which is then like modern little semi.
I've seen it, yeah.
The Mother 32's got high pass, and I don't know this, but folks can. This is true that the high pass is derived by like doing a phase shift.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Like you do like some kind of phase copy of a low pass, and it almost cancels out the low end.
Yeah.
But weirdly, if you add resonance, then the high
brings it
pass
back.
doesn't work. Yeah.
Right.
It's like.
That's what you would do on there.
Yeah.
So by using phase, you can do it. Yeah. Which is
you've got.
I've got that. Yeah. Which is completely brilliant to know that, isn't it? You know?
It's that idea that like, it's that thing of just not being lazy and saying, well, if I want to achieve something, can I work harder and can I achieve it in a? Yeah. it's that thing of just not going, can I just buy something that solves this problem?
No, exactly.
Can I
also, you'll find your own voice
Yes.
if you do that. It's like Daniel Miller programming lots of Depeche bass drums on a 2600, taking hours to do it with a sequencer.
That's I've got a new sort of rig where I got this posh Circlon sequencer, and
I love them. Yeah, I love the idea of them.
The reality is it's a little bit of that Buchla thing of like learning a new language, but and I've had to rebuy my old sampler. I got my Yamaha modern sampler, Yamaha A4000, and I've got like a little modular that I'm putting together for that rig, and I'm starting to think about just having. I want to impose a rule, which is there can be no pre-made drum machine sounds.
You have to
I
make
have
them.
to program every drum sound that I make on this rig,
right,
and record them into the sampler to sort of force me to do that kind of one person and a reel-to-reel aesthetic. It's like where nothing is a preset, nothing is pre-packaged. Because it's so easy, especially working the computer, and I think it's wonderful how quick it is to assemble things and grab sounds and to have the world sounds at your fingertips. But I recognise how quickly I rely on the 808 and the 909 and tried and tested tropes and sounds, and it's tying your hands behind your back in a way that you'll enjoy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does, because it's what I do. I think
it's the natural thing of just no limitations is paralysing.
Yeah, I think it is for me.
Yeah.
And I also don't understand a lot of modern synthesis, I got some mutable instruments, clouds and warps, Clouds
and warps,
Yeah, and they're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's...
what's cool is that she makes digital modules that work in a very analog way.
It does feel like it.
Yeah, like Warps is all digital, but they're all just knob turning. And if you get her other module, Rings, which is very popular, which is like physical modelling, there's no screen, there's just 6 dials or whatever that you just turn.
You just play with.
And do you know what I mean? So it's but it is a digital module, and it's making these almost like piano or things that are like hybrids of pianos and guitars and bells and like.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
They literally there are no delineations. It's a smooth curve from a guitar to a piano. Do you know? You get all these wonderful things. And
Warps does that.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
And so, but what I love is that her aesthetic to make digital things that are analog.
Yeah.
That feel analog.
Well, for me, they're the kind of most. I've got some make noise stuff, low pass gates and things, which I really like. But generally, it's about. I just did a BBC program with artist Gillian Waring, who's amazing, and she wanted electronic music because she'd heard some stuff I'd done, and I'm really into Tomita. I absolutely love Tomita, and actually Tomita was originally asked to do. Squeaky chair, to do Apocalypse Now, which we're talking about, and I can hear that within it, that some of them, they've kind of gone towards his kind of programming. To me, I'm really fascinated by the idea, and I gave her a load of bell sounds that I made with a mini Moog and a ring modulator, and filter, so I worked really hard on making it sound like a church bell, but not quite a church bell, because it's electronic. And these things fascinate me. So if I'm making a track, it's just going back to Abbey Road, there's little things on there, and I bet there's stuff I don't know about that's added in with the acoustics. Like, I'll take my Mini Moog to a session, or the ARP 2600, or the Oberheim. That's really good because it's got very good filters. The, two voice.
Yeah.
Going back to your original question, why have I got these synths? Because I'm fascinated by the idea that when you're making a track, even if it's got guitars and bass, that we might make the bass drum, enhance the bass drum with a mini Moog, and just put a little throb underneath the bass drum that you can hardly hear, or you can hear it a lot, whatever. Bit of white noise on the snare, maybe just a white noise through the track because I want it to hiss a bit more. What's it called? RX has taken out too much.
RX. It's like
it's taken too much noise out, and I want some back, please.
Well, it's only taking out the noise you don't want to give you space to put the noise you do want back.
Exactly, because I do like to hear a bit of hiss within the track.
That's like that concept. Who is it who did this? where he's like, when he made the recording, he hung like a microphone out the window. So you also got like the street noise of New York, very low in the mix, just a tiny little bit of it. Just to
it's a way of gluing stuff together, and it's what we're all searching for,
Well, it's like similar to that thing of putting the tiniest, shortest room reverb on a synth sound, so that it's impossible to hear, but if you muted it, you'd hear that it went away.
Actually, Craig Sylvie, who I was talking about earlier on, when he was mixing our last record with Jeff, he used, what is that thing called? A Space Station, a Ursa Major.
Oh, yes.
And you've got some very short...
Like really posh digital. Posh digital.
8-bit or something, 12-bit, I don't know. I got one immediately after because he put this tiny room sound on something and it made all the difference to the sound, although you could hardly hear it. And I use that a lot, actually, and Tim and I use the reverb a lot on there.
It's that recognition that synths, the dry sound of synths. Although, actually, just as on the dry sound of synths, I watched your... you did an interview with Gaz Williams at like Sonic State.
Oh, that was weird,
But there was a bit, I was watching it, and you talked about Herbie Hancock's Man-Child.
Yes.
And I was like, Adrian Utley says, like, Man-Child, I'm going to go listen to it. I fucking love that record.
Oh,
that's
man, it's
really
beautiful.
Oh, thank you for turning me on to that.
No, it's a
because
really
I'm not a music... So I'm not a music person. I tend to make more music than I listen to.
Right.
The reality, but that I only really knew like Chameleon or Headhunters, and it's the dry Odyssey sound, that he gets, which is the same as on, is it Watermelon Man? Like,
could be,
bow, 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 bum, bum, bum.
Chameleon.
That on Chameleon, is on is on Man-Child as well, and it's such a fucking good sound where it's like that warm, drivey, but it's the driest synth sound. And
I wonder if it's through an amp as well.
It must.
A lot of times they were through amps in those days.
And so maybe there is a tiny little echo that
could be a bit of room in there,
But there's something. I just love that approach to using dryness as well. Like Aphex Twin, also in a lot of his recent stuff, is doing some really wonderful things where he's almost where normally we would have reverb washes and drenches to pad out, he's intentionally leaving it very dry with extremely complex programming so that everything is revealed to you and is right in your face and you can't miss it.
I love it, and I love huge reverb like Space.
God,
that's a bit like crack. You can't turn
even
it off.
tried Space. It's just like
or the blue one. What's it called? Sky, Blue Sky.
I
don't have one of those. Really good. I know. I think, and so for me, all these synths mean something. Like the Korg that's up there, the little
mini Korg. Is it
a
Micro 700 or whatever? It's called?
700.
700.
Yeah, I mean,
is that your first? Was it your first synth?
No, my first synth was a SH10. No, it was a Gen SX1000.
SX1000, the Italian synth.
Yeah, which are really cool.
Yeah.
Don't have that anymore. But I got that quite late on actually, but it's kind of bandpassy, the filter. It's almost vocal.
Yes, there is a Eurorack version of that filter, which I've got.
Is there?
It's called a VCF 74.
Right.
And it's that filter.
It's a brilliant filter.
And it's a really good filter. It's really weird.
It goes kind of bandpassy.
Yeah.
It is weird. And that synth is awesome.
Yeah.
I use it a lot, I've had it modded so I can clock it to a track.
Oh, nice.
Because I like pulsing things.
Isn't it just plays a note, or it doesn't have a sequencer, presumably?
No. It just goes do 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 do. It's called repeat,
Cool.
So I had that modded. It's called Fuckbrain.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's actually called Son of Fuckbrain because Alison Goldfrapp wrote Fuckbrain on one of the Will synths.
Amazing.
Which is called Fuckbrain. And then this guy we know is a really cool guy who repairs stuff. Absolutely amazing person. Fixes everything we've got. Cleaned it off.
So why would you do that?
I don't know. I've got Son of Fuckbrain now.
Okay. Alison around just like, I need her and a Sharpie.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's absolutely a brilliant synth. So that's there. I know what that does, and it always surprises me. MS-20, I use that a lot, put things through it.
Yeah.
It's got that, you know, classically vicious couple of filters.
Wonderfully noisy and like wrong.
Very digital sounding as well, actually.
You think so? In what way?
I think the oscillators, if you just have them on square wave, they don't really sound digital, but there's a kind of brutality to the sound. It's very, very almost
so bright.
Digital.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Not like a mini Moog, which is baggy. Got the mini Moogs, the modular Moog stuff, and its various sequencers. That's where I go to first with my Moog, mini Moog, and I know what I can get out of that, and then it will always surprise me with more things. And you start getting into phase and, you know, reversing phase on stuff. It's brilliant.
You don't use a. Oh, have you got a tuner of some kind? Yeah, you've got a tuner up there.
I've got a tuner up there
just to help. Do you tend to tune things? Well, I suppose you have to if you play with guitar.
No, I don't. I tune by ear.
Yeah.
Same with the guitar. I do use a tuner on a guitar actually, just to get us there. But I think if I'm recording in a studio, what is really good, we all use tuners, but it's really good to, especially if I'm recording somebody or producing, is to we'll just play together and get tuned together, because it makes a kind of composite tuning rather than just everybody isolatingly tuning to a tuner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just tune that by ear, really. And then, you know, I like using clocking from the computer, not MIDI, so that things are clocked to the sequences that run to the computer's clock. That's important. So everything I've got this modern Mellotron. I nearly bought an old one, but you only get 3 sounds. I
think that's one of those things where it's just like, if you just want to have all of the tape banks, you should just get a sample thing.
Well, that's what it is.
Or that Arturia plug-in. You know,
that's good. That's what I like about the Arturia is that you can put your own stuff in it.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
What does it actually do? Like, it just sounds like it's through tape. Do you know what I mean? Or,
yeah, it does. It's cronky.
Yeah.
So it's a gimmicky thing, you know, but you can put amounts of wobble on it, amounts of tape destruction. And so for an effect, it's really good. That's why I wanted it. I mean, people used to put Mellotrons through phaser or use a volume control on it to have the envelope.
Yeah.
And I like that. Same with Mini Moog, like we were talking about Herbie Hancock. They would have put them through like a phaser or a distortion into an amp.
I think that's what David Vorhaus was talking about. He's like, you have to, I think he said, you have to use phasers and things just to bring it to life. Just to bring it to life. Because it's
very old school way of thinking, but it's like guitar pedals. You play guitar, put it for a pedal. Same with the synth.
Yeah.
We tend to go, let's just DI the synth.
Well, there's a kind of laziness or perhaps an overconfidence in the tone of, you know, whereas these people, you forget back in the day, were working hard to make every sound unique and to push their, what they probably thought were very like simple instruments. Of course, now we're embracing the simplicity because we've tasted computers which just have far too many bloody options.
Yes, and also there's just an idea. It's a synth, so it doesn't need an amp. You just put it in here.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't consider. I do actually plug my guitar straight into that UA.
You've got like the 6176.
Fucking man!
Or is that the LA2A?
It's the, I don't know.
Oh no, that's the 6176. Yeah.
I would like to get 2 more of those. Not the compressor, just 2 more.
The 610 preamps.
Fucking hell. Yeah. I know they're modern and everything. I absolutely love it.
Well, it's a version of a 60s or 70s pre, isn't it? So
sounds amazing.
That I don't own one of those, but I've got the UAD things, and the UA 610A plugin is very good for like, if I like put that on a mic, you sound like James, what's his name from LCD Sound System. It's got a very kind of driven, everything sort of, probably a bit like that Herbie Hancock fuzz sort of.
Well, I think, I mean, I love it, you know. Yeah. I've got those Neves above it and the Cowrex. The top one is a couple of Neves, and then there's Cowrex and there's Audix, and I've got a Telefunken, V76 but I always use that UA.
Yeah, that's good.
I absolutely love it. And you can plug straight in the front, and with a synth I sometimes.
You would like chuck synths through.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
And guitar straight into it, straight into the desk.
Got 2 of those Bell delays now. I remember I had one of those.
I've got 3 actually. There's one up there, isn't there?
You've got left, right, and centre as well.
I've got left, right, and a stereo up there.
Yeah,
a grey one.
Yeah.
They're awesome. Yeah. They're absolutely awesome. So you can set up, multi-tap, if you like. Yeah. I absolutely love that.
Crackers.
These are things that I've got and I absolutely love. There's other things that like that Astronics graphic is super rare. There's hardly any of them in the world. Hardly ever use it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of getting rid of it because I just don't use it. Yeah. And whereas the bell delays and the Ursa and the UA, I use them all the time.
Yeah, those are like more subtle. I thought about getting a graphic EQ for my little setup, and I was like, I worry that there's apparently some good like old Clark Technic ones are meant to be good, but I just feel like I would probably cock it up more than I would make an improvement. I'd almost rather, there's too much control with the graphic. Like just give me, and actually the EQ, I've got this old desk made by a company called Sec. It was like a really cheapskate. It's like it was like sort of Mackie before Mackie existed. Yeah. And it's got really good EQ actually. And the EQ's like so simple, but it can almost, I was just trying it the other day and I felt a bit like, in my mind's eye, I felt like I was the Beatles in like the old days. I was like pushing the EQ up fully and sweeping
the mids.
And I was like, oh shit, like it's almost like resonant and it's almost like, ew. Like I was here, I was like, oh mate, that's quite cool actually.
Well, that's King Tubby,
like,
isn't it?
Yeah, I should probably chain a few channels together and if I had enough hands, I could do some.
Well, that was all like those dub producers used to sweep the mids, didn't they?
Yeah.
King Tubby definitely, and
exactly,
all those guys. So I mean, actually, it looks like a lot of kit, but it's all useful.
Yeah.
And I've got nothing. But of course, you become. That's what I started off talking about guitars. You become a collector because these instruments are hard to find now,
and you don't want to. Yeah, that's it.
It's
like I could get like with the DX7. I'm like, they're starting to creep up. They're like £300.
We just used
$400-500
on a track. A friend of mine, Ali Chant, and I were producing this singer. We're going to do her record soon, and she's from a much different generation than us. She's in her 20s, and he just bought a DX7, so he plugged it in, and I was going, "Fuck me, that sounds terrible." Oh my God, listen to that one. That's shit. What's that? Whoa, what is that supposed to be? Strings? Fuck off. And then we got to trombone and I was openly laughing and she went, "That's an awesome sound." I'm going, "Seriously?" She said, "Yeah, that's killer."
Yeah.
I'm like, "What? That trombone? FM trombone? Fucking hell."
Well,
so we stuffed it through a space echo and a few things and man, it's a killer.
Mate,
sounds like something from Eno might use because he uses DX7, doesn't he?
Yeah.
On some of the David Bowie thing, Berlin stuff.
It's like, and also for me, that synth shits on any analog instrument in the world is for pads that make you just sort of feel like you're about to like burst into tears and disappear. Like, strange evocative pads that are long and somber and thoughtful and full of fuzz.
It's really good programming, isn't it?
And a lot of people, I think, people denigrate the DX7 to say, it's annoying to program. I'm like, with the best will in the world, like I look at it like this. I'm like, if you take joy in farting around with synths and achieving the unexpected and going, I wonder what happens if I plug this into this. Well, there is no greater sense of the unexpected than farting around with FM synths.
Oh my God, yeah, I can't get my head around
crazy. And some of the bass sounds as well, like you can make these really like kind of growly bass, and you can layer them with analog instruments, and you can filter them and things, and they make amazing sounds.
If you listen to stuff from, I don't know whether, I doubt DX7 probably was on Thriller, all of the Quincy Jones stuff at that time. There's a lot of synclavier.
It would have been that whole like meow meow on Beat It. Is it on Beat It?
Oh yeah, it's on the beginning of Beat It.
That's a synclavier.
That's straight from a demo because
it is.
The stuff you sent me from Arturia.
It's got that sound.
Well, it's kind of it. It isn't quite it.
Oh, is it not?
No, but
maybe they VQ'd it and put it through an amp or something.
Well, apparently they just took it straight off the demo record. I heard.
There is because there are YouTube videos where you can actually hear the demo record.
It's that funny little sound at the beginning. But I mean, listening to things like Beat It or I know because my son was listening to Michael Jackson a lot. We don't listen to him now.
I know. Yeah. That's the thing. Is like, do you throw? It's like Bill Cosby. And it's like, do you That's like it's really hard.
That's a big one.
It's difficult, isn't it? But, and especially when someone had an impact on music and inspired a lot of people. It's that thing of, can you separate the person from their art? You know, and it's
hard.
It is hard, isn't it?
Like, but at the time we were listening to it a lot. I was listening to Billie Jean and the Moog bass on it. And I was trying, and because I was listening to it a lot and the engine wasn't on in the car a couple of times, you could hear the production and the sound of digital stuff going on, but also the Mini Moog, that incredible bass line. But I think there's two of them. I think there's something punctuating in there as well. And it's just brilliant. But we were talking about digital stuff and Synclavier and Fairlight. Those sounds are absolutely bloody amazing. They really are.
It's like they're returning to the Akai sampler. Like there is a sound.
I love some of those sounds. It does
sound great. Like, and you can just, like, people who love the MPC 60 and the SP12.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, people it's a mate of mine who is like, the MPC 60, mate, he's like, all I can say is it bangs.
Yeah, it totally does.
It bangs.
Well, everybody was really, the MPC 60 was, I think DJ Premier used to use, and a lot of hip hop producers used to use. And they're super tight programming, you know. Well, everything I've got gets used. There's nothing here apart from stuff that's leaning against the wall upstairs.
And then there's graphic, which you're like, you would get rid of it. You're not going to slavishly keep.
Oh no, I'm not. I never keep stuff that I don't use.
Yeah,
I have slightly regretted that with a couple of things, but I kind of know. It's like that Bentley drum machine up there.
Bentley Rhythm.
Yeah,
Ace.
Rhythm Ace. Yeah, I've
like
used that tons.
Yeah.
And it's, even when I'm with a band, rather, if we're going to have a click, I'd rather it was that.
Yeah.
And I've had it now modified massively by Danny again so I can MIDI it and clock it.
Yeah.
And it will clock to a track if there's something on there, because it's been a pain because you'd have to just record it and then play to that. So everything I have has got a reason, really. And I know to some extent what it's going to do.
Yeah.
VCS 3, important, you know.
Yeah.
Switch it on and see what it's saying today is my trick, you know. And go, okay, just record that. That sounds cool.
Yeah. Today, that's what it wants to contribute to this.
Yeah, because I did this record with a guy called Perfume Genius about 4 years ago, something, 5 years. And there's a lot of electronics on there.
Yeah.
And Mellotron was very, very featured on that. And but yeah, the VCS 3, a couple of times, switch it on. I'd been fucking about with it and left it, you know, like a week ago. And I can't remember what it was doing.
Yeah.
So switch it on. Oh, it's doing that. And now that's quite cool. Let's just record that and tweak this, you know.
So, final question is, and I mean, I know this may be a bit of there's no good answer for yourself, because it feels like you've embraced like an old way of working because of the aesthetics. But the question is, what do you think is the future of music technology, or at least what would you like to have that doesn't exist? Something that would make your life easier, other than infinite time.
I'm pretty happy with what I've got, actually. I'm never going to reach the end of the synths I've got. I'll never learn all of the harmonic concept that I want to know, or have the technique on a guitar that it'll never end. So, and the guitar is a solid thing for me, you know. And synths, I've got everything I want. I've
Absolutely everything.
Pretty much. No, probably not. I'll be ringing you up saying, can I get one of those things?
Yeah.
I'm quite interested in interface more.
Yeah.
How to make things. I haven't quite, you know, the touche. We were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Is going to some extent towards that. I think the main thing to do in life, musically, is to know what it is you want to do with your music in the end. And you know, to go back to Billie Eilish again, I don't know why I'm talking about it. It's just because the kids have been playing it so much, and I've been sitting there thinking, oh, this is cool, but more than that, why? And it almost sounds like garage band, some of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's an objective here and there's an aesthetic.
They've absolutely nailed it.
Like, they totally have. No, it sounds incredible, you know. And like as albums that come along over the years, you hear it and you go, "Fuck, man, that is so good." Like Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. I didn't really like it too much at the time because it wasn't my vibe, but you listen to it, or Thriller, and you just go, "Fuck, man, that is, you know, that personifies an idea. That is." And they've used the tools they need to do that, and no more, no less, you know. And I feel the same about music, you know. I have got a lot of equipment, so it's not like I'm just doing it with a tape machine and one synth. Yeah. But I would be very happy to do that.
Bottom line is you have a very clear objective about what you, or at least
I have.
Yeah, you do know what you want it to sound like, and you've chosen an instrument for a specific purpose, or it's still here.
Yeah, I mean, what I have just recently got, because I've been collecting old drums like this.
Drums.
Real drums, mostly from the 20s, 30s, and traps that they used to use for sound, like wood blocks and various different things, which I really like. And I got onto Roland, and they gave me one of their SPD pads.
Like a sampler pad.
Yeah, so I've sampled a lot of my sounds.
Oh, nice.
And now I can take them to a session and have them. Yeah. Like these giant bass drums, and you know, and you can, and I've got electronic sounds on there. I don't use any of the stock sounds. They're all my sounds in there. So that's a modern piece of kit. I wish it would tune on the fly, it doesn't. You have to do it on a computer, but it's a drag. But that's an addition. Came in the last few months. I really like it. I like the Arturia keyboards. I think I've got a couple of them.
The Keystep.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely, completely brilliant. Yeah. You know, it just works. The
you do the sequencer thing as well.
I haven't got into the sequencer.
Oh my God, it's the
Is
best,
it cool? It's like an SH-101.
About that keyboard.
Is it?
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that. I talk to people because it's interesting seeing how well that keyboard does really well, and I think it's just because people just really it's just the right size.
It's piss simple.
But the sequencer on it is like a Steve Reich machine.
Is it?
It's a Steve Reich. It's a polyphonic sequencer. It's a polyphonic step sequencer.
Okay, I'll get into that.
Yeah, it's really good.
I've got two of them.
And
I
also
looked at it.
There's a new. This is really boring. There's a new firmware for it, which actually has an idea in that I suggested they've implemented, where if you can basically create. It's really boring. You hold record and there's keys 1 to 16. You can, if you want a 12-step sequence, you can hold record and you go 8, 8, 2, 2, and it will create a 12-step sequence. And then you can just dab a note and you'll listen and you'll hear it's playing the sequencer, and you can clock it to any of your stuff. And then you can just hold chords, notes of up to 8 chords, or chords of up to 8 notes. And so you can just do these Steve Reich's music for 18 musicians. Very quickly get music for 18 musicians things going on with and if you have 2 of them.
Oh, you mean polyrhythmic?
Polyrhythmic, because of course you can have 12. You can have anything up to 64 step sequences, but they're polyphonic. And what's amazing about the sequencer is that it's imagine it's like a tape machine with a playhead, but it's always got record enabled if you push a key down. So as you're listening, you're just listening to it. You're like, that's a really cool thing, but I could just dab that chord in just there, then just dab it in, and it will overdub or overwrite what was there.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So you can very quickly get something going that's polyphasic, and then you can also overwrite and sort of evolve the sequence
within the sequence,
as all in real time. I
should get on with
honestly that's that, and I thought that's the reason people are buying this thing. I don't think it is.
No, it's because it's the arpeggio. For me, it's the arpeggiator really works. It clocks in all different ways, and it does it. There's no fucking about. It actually works, and it's portable. And I've got a Moog, really rare Moog duophonic keyboard that goes with this modular.
The 951.
Whatever it is. I'm selling it, man. I just use the Keystep.
Right.
It's perfectly brilliant. Yeah. And I've also it can clock with these sequences or clock the sequences.
To them, or from them,
So because I use those sequences in different, one of those is a Moon, and some of them you can set it on 3, the other one on 8.
Yeah.
You get these polyrhythmic things.
Yeah.
I generally do that on tracks. Did a lot with Perfume Genius and a woman called Françoise Brut. I overlaid sequences with different time signatures at the end, so that they're never
they phase,
and they also never repeat their sequence.
And also, using a sequence that's 8-step long, but using like a modulation sequence that's 3.
I do that as well, yeah.
So it's like, it's great.
Yeah, for the filter or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brilliant. So the key step is integrated with that for me. I'll look into that sequence. I like also there's the arpeggiator. I just used it with their package that we were talking about.
That V collection with the Mellotron and like the.
I really like the Casio.
Yeah, the FZ.
Yeah.
Not the FZ, the CZ.
CZ, yeah. And they used there's a setting of arpeggios that's I can't remember what it's called now, but it's it adds the note it prioritizes what you've just done.
Yeah.
So if you were to play a triad, it will play it as a sequence, as a arpeggiator. But if you take one finger off and put it on again, it rearranges the order. It's called order or something.
As played. So
yes.
you can put in a thing and it will go.
It'll play it
will
as
respect
you did it.
The sequence or the. Yes, it's like a sequencer. But,
it kind of is. And if you mess with your playing as it's happening, you get all this complex stuff.
There is the new firmware update. I think adds an order to the arpeggiator on the key step as well.
Oh, I should do that.
It will respect the order in which. It's £99.
Oh man, it's brilliant! I've turned so many people onto it. Loads of friends, and it powers up from USB. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
I think it's an excellent bit of kit. For me, it works. It's really simple, and I haven't even got into the sequencer.
Yeah, well, you need a polysynth is the thing. That's the only thing. Because it's polyphonic. All of your things are mono here.
They are. I've got
the PS.
Yeah, but that's not MIDI. You can't get into it.
Yeah.
I've got a Jupiter 4 that's leaning against the stairs that I use a lot.
If that MIDI, or have you retrofitted it?
Yeah, I bought it. It was already MIDI.
Right.
MIDI, yeah.
Perfect.
And that's my only MIDI polysynth, I think.
Oh, you should definitely hook it.
Yeah.
Because
that is a fantastic sounding synth. Yeah.
Or get hook it up to the computer and get some piano sounds for Reishi or marimbas.
Yeah. Well, actually, the thing that I did for the program was very Reich-like, using that key step with the CZ.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it was very cool. And I mean, as soon as you sent me it, I did this piece of music, and then I sent it to them, and they liked it, and that's it. It's extremely simple. Yeah. It's nothing complicated about it. But.
Well, isn't that the sort of thing of that what's the joke where the person has a problem with their plumbing? And the plumber comes in and they're the plumber sort of looks around and he sort of listens and he taps a little thing here and he taps a pipe there and he taps a pipe there and he goes back and he just hits the other one and it just all starts working. And he bills him and it's £5,000. And he's like, what the fuck is this? £5,000? And he's like, and he looks at the itemised bill and it's like a call out charge, £50, the tap, £50. And then it's knowing where to tap. £4,900.
It's true. It's totally true. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was good fun. Yeah. We could talk for many years.
No, of course. Well, I think that's it. Maybe there's got to be a sequel someday.
Yes. Well, I'm definitely up for that sequel, Adrian. If you always enjoy our synth chats, how could you not? I mean, what a brilliant man, and full of stories and knowledge, experience, and a mighty fine collection of instruments. But not so many, as he says. Adrian has what he uses and gets rid of what he does not. And I think that is the thing that we all need to bear in mind. If I don't use it, I get rid of it. So can you do that? The stuff that you've got that you can get rid of, it's returning to that thought of Square Pusher and what do you really need? And Square Pusher has just basically gone through all of this stuff and has just sacked it all off. And I mean, actually, possibly better to mention Aphex, who in interviews, because obviously if you've read about Aphex, a pal of Adrian Utley's, but I mean, if you've read about Aphex, like Adrian, he's got kind of one of everything. He's got a bit of everything. He's got and I mean, Aphex, I think, has several of everything. He really does have a lot of kit if, all of the various kit lists and stuff are to be believed. And so you might ask, how can you wrangle all that gear and stay productive? And I mean, the answer is on that Cyro gear wheel, which is that he doesn't use it all at the same time. And I don't even think, I mean, this is a bit of a luxury if you have it, but I don't think he has it all in the same room, of course. It's in multiple rooms, in multiple places in his house, which is a way of saying, you know, what he does is what Square Pusher is doing as well, which is to say that you have your laptop as the kind of reel-to-reel, as we were talking about with Adrian, and you just have a choice selection of things, maybe 2 or 3 bits of gear that you use with that laptop or with that reel-to-reel. And those are the things that you focus on and make music with on that day. And you just move around your little gear setups. And whilst, of course, we don't all have the luxury of different rooms, I certainly don't. I've got one room. But what I do have is, you know, it's still perfectly possible to arrange gear within that room so that things are chosen to work with each other in a specific way. And actually, there's another approach which I've seen done to excellent effect, and that was by my pal Alex Maiolo's setup. This is Alex from the band XXX Snacks near Asheville in North Carolina. And what Alex did in his little like garage studio is he had shelving. So he had shelving with his synths on it, not plugged in at all, like just literally shelving that held, you know, like a Juno 60 and small organs and a mini Moog and stuff. And then he just had a keyboard stand, like a heavy duty keyboard stand in the middle of his room next to the computer, so that he can pick up a synth from the shelf, walk it over to the stand, plonk it down, plug it in, the cables are all there, and just use that. And then myself and other pal Spencer, we just sat and we made some music in his studio just with that little system, just like pick up the Juno 60, plonk it down, pick up the Korg Monopoly, plonk it down, you know, and so on, and pick up the Mini Moog, plonk it down. And that works really well as well, that you're just picking up the thing that you want to record at that time, put it down, and then when you're done, put it back. It's not that hard to do, and it's getting around this whole thing of just surrounding yourself by a billion different things, which is kind of like the same thing as just looking into a DAW and just seeing a million plugins and going, I have literally no idea where to start. So I think that's a good approach, is to treat, if you do have a gear collection, get some shelves, treat it like a library. Because I think that's probably the only way that you could make having a whole collection of things, you know, 10 different sound-making synths or more at any one time. I just don't know any other way to make it manageable, because I'm just not clever enough to be able to have 50 things around me and, you know, be able to meaningfully wrangle them at any one time. I think, like Aphex and like Adrian, you kind of need to just have the few things, you know what they're good for, and you choose them carefully and you go to that thing today to make music with. That seems to make sense. And it's just what I'm thinking about as we lead into this new year. Good God, a whole new year and a new decade, the 20s. What will it bring? Hopefully not death and destruction. I mean, there will be some death and destruction, as there already is, but I hope for yourself that it will be a productive decade. What would you like to do? Make some objectives, write them down, think about them, and start working towards them. Life moves pretty fast. Tempus fugit. So, thank you to Adrian Utley. Thank you for giving me your time so kindly and hanging out. Thank you to our sponsors, the beautiful Signal Sounds, the beautiful Nathan Moody of Obsidian Sound, Signal Sounds, Obsidian Sound, keep them in mind. And thank you for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, tell your friends. Podcasts die in obscurity. So I definitely rely on you to tell people about this. Tell people if you enjoyed listening to this episode. You can sponsor me on Patreon if you like to do such things. The meager income that this generates is what means my wife does not absolutely kill me for doing it. So please kindly help contribute to that fund. But even if not, thank you. Muchas gracias. We'll see you at NAMM. Bye.